You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. Every year since 2013, actually since 2012, excuse me, 247 Sports and their national writer Bud Elliott has put out what he calls his blue chip ratio. This is very simply explained the ratio of 5 and 4 stars that you have on a roster over the course of 4 years. And that percentage tells you over this rolling period what teams actually have a chance to win the national championship, because it's never been below a certain number. So if you look at the blue chip ratio, for example, in 2021, Georgia won the national championship. Their blue chip ratio was at 80%. They beat Alabama, who was the only team that had a higher blue chip ratio a year ago for the national championship. In 2020, Alabama, the national championship, their blue chip ratio was 83%. All 4 playoff teams were teams that had an appropriate blue chip ratio. LSU in 2019 had a 64% blue chip ratio. Again, all 4 playoff teams met the blue chip ratio criteria. Clemson in 2018 had a 61% mark. All 4 teams were blue chip ratio schools. Alabama in 2017 was at 80%. Clemson in 16 had 52%, which was actually the lowest in this era. Alabama in 2015 was at 77%. Ohio State in 2014 at 68%. Jimbo's Florida State team in 2013 was at 53%. Bama in 2012 at 71%. Bama again in 2011 also was at 71%, the team that, of course, beat LSU for the national championship. My point is, the blue chip ratio has never gone below 52%. That was Clemson in 2016. So the benchmark is above 50% or above 52%. So what Bud Elliott has done is he goes through and he looks at a rolling average over 4 years to say what schools have at least 50% 4 and 5 stars that they've signed over that 4-year period. And that makes up the blue chip ratio. And those schools, if you believe it, with this more than decade-long history, are the only ones that have a chance of winning the national championship. If your blue chip ratio isn't above 50%, you can't win the national championship because no one ever has. It's proof, again, that the teams with the best talent win. Yet, you can talk about facilities, you can talk about coaching, you can talk about conference, you can talk about all of it. And all of it factors in some way. But this is an irrefutable part of that metric. There have been teams who have made the playoff. Cincinnati a year ago did not meet the blue chip ratio, but they got waxed in their playoff game. Washington, when they made the playoff, got waxed. I mean, we've seen that before. Okay. There are 15 schools who meet the blue chip ratio benchmark. And yes, LSU is one of them. LSU is 7th among teams with the appropriate blue chip ratio. Alabama leads the way with a staggering 89%. Over 4 years, 89% of Alabama signees have been either 5 or 4 stars. The number 2 team on the list is Ohio State at 80%. Enormous gap. Basically, Alabama will win a championship this year. I mean, just get ready for it. Georgia at 77%. I know I'm throwing out a lot of numbers, but if you're watching the graphics on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, Oklahoma at 71%. Texas A&M at 70%, 5th best. Texas at 68%, and there's LSU at 66%. Now, I know you're going to ask, what about the transfers? I'm going to get to that in a minute because they did account for that this year. Clemson, Notre Dame, Florida, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, Miami, and Auburn. That's the list. If you believe in the history, one of those 15 schools will win the national championship. Others need not apply. The really encouraging news, if you're LSU, is you're still on that list. Now, we've looked at the projected win total for LSU this year, and for a lot of reasons you can understand why the projected win total is where it is. Tremendous turnover, brand new coaching staff, back-to-back 500 seasons, learning to win again, all that stuff. So I'm not sitting here projecting LSU to win a national championship. Please don't misunderstand me. What I'm saying is LSU's roster is still, talent-wise, not far off from the best in college football and still considered among the most talented 15 rosters in college football. Listen, this most recent draft, isn't that the greatest condemnation on the results of the last 2 years? When you had that many guys drafted and you finished sub 500? That's the reason Ed Orgeron isn't the coach anymore, obviously. But the point is, there's still talent on this roster, as there always should be at LSU. Now, the really interesting part, which I just talked about, is the transfers. Because the transfer portal has clearly shaped a lot of this. For example, 2 of the 5 stars LSU signed in the past couple of seasons are Eric Gilbert and Elias Ricks. Neither are on LSU's team anymore. That matters, right? So this year, they did account for, they essentially released an adjusted blue chip ratio that did account for transfers. So what's your blue chip ratio without transfers? And then what's your blue chip ratio with transfers? You're probably not going to be surprised to learn that Alabama is still number 1. They actually went up from 89% to 90%. Well, I mean, you add a 5-star and Elias Ricks, and clearly you're going to go up. What will probably disappoint you is that LSU went, as much as we think of the transfers that LSU added, and I've tried to tell y'all, you're not better in the secondary losing Ricks and McLaughlin and adding the guys you did. LSU's blue chip ratio actually went down 4% as a result of the transfers. In part, 5 stars like Ricks and Gilbert, who left, factor into that. So LSU, actually, the roster with the transfers drops from 66% to 62%. So clearly that hurts. The roster turnover for LSU this year has hurt its total roster. The most incredible part of this, though, Paul, pull the graphic back up again if you would. Look at the differential. So if the transfers didn't affect at all, it's a white number, 0. If it affected you negatively, it's red. If it affected you positively, it's green. There's one team on the list, one, that has a green number. It's Alabama. They're the only team that had a positive impact from the transfer portal. Oklahoma went down 6%. Miami went down 6%. That's massively significant. Oklahoma makes sense, right? You lose the coach, Spencer Rattler transfers out, Caleb Williams transfers out. It just makes a lot of sense what happened there at Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma and LSU had coaching changes and major turnover, and you understand why their number was bigger than others might have been. But still a little jarring to see it. So there's good news and bad news. The good news is you're not far. You're not far. You're still among the 15 best rosters. Just talent 1 to 85. You are still among the 15 best rosters in college football today, based on this metric. But for this year, all of the transfers, your roster is not better than it would have been. And that's the disappointing part. Now, there are variables we can't account for. What if Jaden Daniels becomes the starter and just balls out? Awesome. You exceed your projected win total. Be fantastic. What if Jark, Bernard-Converse, Sevin Banks, Mekhi Gardner, those dudes go out and have all conference caliber seasons? Awesome. We'll let it play out and see how it goes. But there's a good news, bad news there. And the good news is, while it may not be great for LSU this year, you may not be a championship contender, you're not far. That's the real news. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.